We're going to try to make this as personal as we can. So we'll see if we let it out to the world at large. Rabbi Geffen called me earlier today. I was traveling. I was visiting other people in different sections of Yerushalayim. But I had time to sit down and take some notes and to think about what I would like to tell you. First of all, and I'm going to really go from really the end to the beginning, the fact that I'm sitting here giving a lecture to you guys, if you would have asked me, not only when I was your age, but when I was in my 30s and 40s, if you asked me, would this ever happen, I would not have to think about it. It wasn't going to happen. It just wasn't. It was like, how is this going to happen? How am I going to be introduced by somebody like Rabbi Greenblatt? How am I speaking to students, to young adults, mature young adults such as yourselves, and actually being given responsibility of telling you something that's going to be worthwhile to you in life? So a little bit of my story. My story is not nearly as exciting as your story. I was born into a religious home, and I grew up seeing all the Jewish practices, and it was a good Jewish home. My father was someone who was very active in advancing and further Jewish study and establishing yeshivos. Interestingly enough, my father, just to get a frame of where I'm coming from, I'm the youngest in my family. My father was 40 when he got married. So my dad was born in 1898. So already I'm connected to, I'm going back a while. And life was different, the world was different, people's perspectives were different, people's goals were different. They're much more focused. It was really a different society. But I grew up normal. I grew up in Brooklyn, grew up a regular American kid. And now let's just go back to where I am now, and then let's kind of figure this out. There are a couple of things that I was very fortunate in life. There were pivotal meetings that I had with different people. It's so important in life. Everyone is given opportunities. I should not have to convince you of that. On Shabbos I spoke about, I know some of you I know are here. If you're here, that means you are someone who is aware of what's going on around you, aware of what's going on in your life, and willing to some degree to take a little bit of a risk, a little bit of a gamble. Let me see this, what was presented to me, am I going to let it just blow right past me? Or am I going to see where is this going to take me? So I actually think I might be the author of this phrase that I'm going to say, but if it is plagiarism, I really don't mean to steal it. But it goes like this: coincidence is providence, just a bit more disguised. Coincidence is providence, just a bit more disguised. Coincidence doesn't exist. It didn't just, you don't just happen to be anywhere. You didn't just happen to be in Israel. The war with Iran didn't just happen. It's all part of a script. You know, each one of us, our rabbis teach us that for each Jew, and we learned in the Sugya, we were learning the value of a Jewish life, of a single Jewish life. A single Jewish life is the entirety of the world. In the words of our rabbis, B'shvili nivra ha'olam. For me, the world was created. How do we understand that? Especially when forget the billions of people in the world, but let's talk about the Jewish nation. Still, it's millions of people. So how did that, in practice, how do I relate to that? So, in one way, I relate to it, well, I am so important that the world should be created for me. But then again, as soon as God created the world and created one person, immediately, well, lo tov, heyos lo adam levado. It's not good for man to be alone. Well, why not? If because of me the world should be created, so now why didn't, if they're whatever, that pick a number, 10 million Jews. It would be no more difficult for God to create 10 million worlds than one world. So if each one of us it's worth that the world creates for us, so why didn't just God give us each our own world? So how do we look at it? So the way it was explained to me, I think Rabbi Vigna Miller says it this way, is you have a play. The play has there are main characters, there's the main character, there's supporting roles, there's extras that you don't even see, you don't even see their faces. You can have many, many people in a play. More often than not, there's one main actor. We're each obligated to look at ourselves as, yes, b'shvili nivra ha'olam, for me the world was created, and I'm the main character. I mean, it's that camera, well, it might be focused on me. No, there's a camera focused on each and every one of us, and we're in every single scene. You never have that in a play, unless you have only one person in the play, which sometimes you have. But it's a play with other actors. The main character is never in every single scene. But in your play, each one of us is in every single scene. Now, what's going on in the room might be that seemingly maybe I'm playing more of an important part than you are, which one can argue I'm not, because who says talking is greater than receiving? Receiving, listening, might be more difficult than speaking. Most people don't fall asleep when they're speaking, or they don't yawn when they're speaking. If they start doing that, it's time to walk out. But people listening, yeah, they can doze off. So this may be more about you than about me. You came to a lecture, and you're listening, and you want to absorb. Because right now, you're playing a very important scene in your life. Why is it important? Because every scene in your life is important. So b'shvil nivra olam, and you are, and we need to look at ourselves that way. And indeed, the rabbis do give that analogy. How would one, the beginning, I know some of you boys learn the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. I think that's a sefer that it's encouraged that to learn halacha, and he goes through the entirety of the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, in a abridged version. And right at the beginning, he says one of the first things is that to look at yourself that you're always in God's presence. Now, if you were in front of a king, you would act a certain way, you would speak a certain way. So right now, whatever I'm doing is important. It's important. Let's not look at it so much from the religious point of view. I'm probably going to quote him more often than not, which is Yeshivat Ohr. Not that I want to plug the book, but certainly I don't mind. Get this book. It's a great book from Yeshivat Ohr, The Thinking Jewish Teenager's Guide to Life. He says we're all born with talents and skills, like a toolbox filled with tools. That's our talents. Whether we're musically inclined, how intelligent we are, how good we are at discerning things. And everyone has their own sets of talents, skills, character traits that are either make it easier for one to succeed, or character traits that will make it difficult for one to succeed. And one has to overcome someone who gets jealous easily, someone who angers easily, has a job in front of him. But we all have the same job. Again, we all live in the world together, and when we're born, we're given a toolbox, And we're all told the same instructions. Go build yourself. Each one of us individually and independently has to build themselves. Now, of course, that's why we each don't have our own world. If I have an anger issue, anger is usually, perhaps exclusively, the world is not going the way I think it should be going. Now, if someone else got something that I think I should have gotten, it's very easy for me to get, if I'm prone to anger, I will get angry either at that person or at the world in general, or maybe even, we're not going to go there. But if I had my own world, it kind of doesn't make sense to get angry. It's my world, I do what I want. So I can get angry at myself, it doesn't usually work so well. If I had my own world, who would I be jealous of? Who would I want to be king over? The world works because we're all here together. But we're each independent. We're each the main actor in this play, because this is my play. This is my world. And what I do with it is totally up to me. So I'm going to jump forward. I want to really... Okay, so it's not a secret. I'm 74 years old. I have 12 children. They're all married. I have, thank God, I have over 80 grandchildren and I think 15 great-grandchildren. I was in yeshiva yeshiva and kolo till I was 30. I was in the real estate business from 30 to 65, 66. Working the whole day. And then I retired. Thank God I did well financially. So now I'm retired. So what happens at retirement? Retirement could be daunting, it could be great, or it could be the worst thing possible. Keep in mind that retirement is a relatively recent concept that if you would have said this 100 years ago, certainly going back further than that, no one would know what you're talking about. Think about it. You're living, right? You need to live, you need to eat, you need money. What does that mean? You're retiring from what? Retire to do what? So you can have your average person, if he doesn't have really what to do, very successful men who could well afford to retire achieve their greatest, we'll call them, because that's what they're seeking, their greatest financial successes were achieved well after they were 65 years old. Or, on the other hand, they could have had enough money and they were 40 and financially retired, but they didn't. The concept of retirement, you have to keep it in mind, because in America it's so pervasive. The American dream is, I should, legally, I should earn as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, and then be able to stop working. Stop working and do what? So one of the first decisions I made, for quite a number of years, I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I went to a kollel in the morning. This is when I was working. And I had learned in a class together with 15, 20 other working people. So from 6 to 8 in the morning, we studied Talmud, then we prayed, then we went to work. So the first decision I had to make when I retired was, I don't have to get up at 5:30 because everyone's got to work, so I can get up later and learn for more than 2 hours. So we're going to get to that. That was the first test. That was my first test. Am I going to continue to make sure I get to bed early enough at night that I can get up at 5:30 in the morning and function, or that no, if I don't have to get up early, I can relax at night, have a glass of wine, relax. Hey, you earned it. You're retired. Enjoy life. Thank God I passed that test. And no, I make sure I get to sleep early enough. Sometimes I will have a glass of wine. but I make sure I get up early enough. And so not only did I continue the learning that I was doing while I was working when I had less time, but now I can increase that. So I get up at 5:30, have in a kola from 6 to 8, then we pray, then it's off time till around 10:30, quarter to 11, and I joined a different kola from quarter to 11 till 1 o'clock. Then off time again till like 4 o'clock, big breaks, I get to exercise. Second test I had, I told my friends, I was athletic when I was younger, still relatively athletic. I told my friends, if you hear that I started golfing, tell me I never should have retired. Now, golf's enjoyable, and it's also healthy, and you have the time, so why not? Now, in business, you want a good return on your investment. Whatever you're putting in, you got to spend money to make money. If it's not money, it's time, it's effort, it's risk. You don't put all your money into any investment. But you want a good return on your investment. You want it to be your risk-reward ratio. Golfing, the amount of exercise you get per the amount of minutes and hours that the activity takes, it's not worth it. At least if your goal is just to stay healthy. If your goal is to take up as much time as possible, golf is great. And I really recommend it if someone has a lot of time on his hands. And I would be the first one to golfing. It's great. It takes up a good 3 hours. Go for it. Get out of the house. Much better than going shopping, walking down the aisles with your wife in the supermarket. That's not like some of these retired people do. That's not a good idea. So do other stuff. I bike ride. I swim. I have an elliptical. I concentrate. I did have 2 cars. I basically chucked 1 car, and whether it's a half a mile or a mile to where I have to go to. So again, I'm retired. I have time. So I factor in, let's be efficient. So it takes X amount of time to walk there, and the time to walk. So now, not only was it walking to exercise, but I found out something really fascinating about walking, especially by yourself. I found that I really enjoy the company. It's just being by yourself. Now, crossing a busy street while you're on the phone is not exactly advisable, even though there are people that do it. But if you walk and you give yourself time, some alone time to think, we're in this week's, it's actually this week's Torah reading. So I was here in Ohr Somayach many years ago, and Rabbi Zev left. I might have even said this previously at Ohr Somayach. If you look in the Chumash, you see the Chumash has breaks, and there's either the letter, the os pei or no samach, which stops, and there's like a break in the line or the break towards the end of the line. That kind of, okay, there's this paragraph, this segment, this subject, and there are breaks. The reason, of course, there's never only one reason given for it is because we need time, because even Moshe, that was taught the Torah by God, there needed to be breaks. You have to stop, you have to absorb, and you have to process. You can't have a continuous feed of information into you, even if you're following. Again, even if you're following, this is Moshe, the student, God, the teacher. God could have just kept on going, and Moshe would have followed. He would have been listening. But what would have been missing? The missing is, there was an old commercial back in my day, the pause that reflects. You need to look back. You need to absorb, and equally or perhaps more important, you have to process. What did the Ramban, in his famous, it's called Yigeres HaRamban, and he strongly advocates that whenever you learn, whenever you get up from a learning session, get up and say to yourself, what did I just learn? how can I incorporate what I just learned into something that's going to impact my daily schedule? How can I apply it? The Torah is the greatest mitzvah of all. But if someone would learn the Torah, specifically with the intent of not applying it to life, that's not Torah. As great a mitzvah of the study of Torah is, it's specifically for the purpose of incorporating it into your life. So to get back, again, a little bit personal, to myself, I was fortunate that I did see some of the signs. And they're always signals. Hashem is always sending us signals. We have to, and again, you guys are phenomenal that you're here. But you have to continue to listen for them. And don't be afraid to go down that road. If for some reason you think that voice, or that urge that I'm having, and it's an urge to do something good, because we know what an urge to do something not good feels like. So it's not really that hard to differentiate between the urge to do something good and the urge to do the opposite. Don't be afraid of it. Walk down that path. It's almost a guarantee. And I should say it is a guarantee because a rabbi teaches that. Haba, someone who comes letaher, to purify himself, Misayanos also, Hashem assists you, He helps you. We can't accomplish anything on our own. It's in a lot of times our defeatist attitude comes from come on, what am I going to accomplish? Seriously, me, talking about me, what am I going to accomplish? You know what, you're right. If it was just you, odds are you couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But you got to take that first step. If you take that first step, so let's see. Okay, somehow I'm getting this urge, and I'm getting this feeling, and I'm hearing this again, like what you heard and what you saw and what you felt when you came here, and I think you'd all agree it ended up pretty good. I had a great time with you guys. 1 week is a smaller chunk of my life than it is of yours. I'm here a week. Like, I'm going to come home next week. Like, my family will go, wow, who are you? We change. It takes a lot less time than we think to change. Because time, thank you, Albert Einstein, time is relative. It's been proven. I think it's not even a theory anymore. I think it's accepted as a law. Einstein's theory of relativity has been proven. Now, it's not such a novel concept because time, however we understand it, or rather, I should say, however we don't understand it, because I don't understand it, time is a creation. Before the creation of the world, there was no time and there was no place. We, because our brains were created by God, so it only has the ability to understand what it can understand. How would we understand? What does that mean that there's no time? So, right, what does it mean there's no place? Okay. It's also important, as much as you'll get to understand things here at Ohr Somayach, and as much as in Ohr Somayach they encourage questions, as much as you have from Rabbi Breitowitz and Rabbi Gottlieb, Rabbi Greenblatt, you have all these great rabbis to ask you questions to. But there's some questions that we need to accept. The world is created. This is the system. Understand the system, work within the system. There's so much that we can understand. There's so many questions that we can ask that we shouldn't make the mistake, you get challenged by somebody. I'll believe if you can answer this question. We're not having a debate for the purpose of a debate. It's not winning or losing. It's the question, are you looking at the world that this is something, I'm here, I have a choice in how I'm going to live my life in this world. I get to see different people. I see people here. I see the rabbis here. I see the mentors that came here. I see their lives, their wives, their children, their families, their goals, their priorities, and their interests. And they're very much immersed in society, and they could be following sports and what we would consider, living the more normal life. But what are their priorities? What's unshakable to them? What is, like, if you mention the idea of violating the Shabbos, they're like no. I know it's very, but a Q&A, like, let's say you have this huge deal, it's about to close before Shabbos. Like, what do you do? Now, to people in the secular world or becoming a Baal Tshuva, say that's a huge test. You have to be careful with tests. There's a concept that Rav Dessler on free will, your point of free will, right? You test, you're being tested, being challenged. That challenge is not universal. That challenge is always specific to each and every one of us. And at that point of challenge, I remember when I was growing up, there was a television show called The Man from U.N.C.L.E. This is in the 60s. I loved that television show. And it was on, I think, Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Now, I don't know if they still do it that way, but in those days, if a show got really popular, they switched it to Friday night, because that was the biggest audience. Now you couldn't tape things in those days. There was no way out of it. You couldn't, if you're not watching television Friday night, you are missing that show. And I remember sitting in the living room and looking at the television. Yeah, 9 o'clock, it's on. But was I even close to turning on the television? No, it's not happening. That wasn't my test. Shabbos was so ingrained in me, even then, that was I aware that it was 9 o'clock and it was on? Yes. There are some pious people that never heard of the Man of U.N.C.L.E. and never would watch television. It was on a Tuesday night. But to me, was it? But it wasn't. The Shabbos wasn't a test. Did I get schar? Did I get reward for not watching? Of course. But if I would have, Hashem would have said, "Come on, seriously, Zecharia, what are you doing?" And I would say it to myself. That doesn't mean I didn't have my own test then. We're not going to, maybe after the class we'll go into what my tests were then or what my tests are now. Your tests are always when there's an equal pull to what your urge is, or your body wants, whichever pleasure your body is seeking, whether it's simply just to be lazy or to make money, to steal, or all the other vices. Every vice that's out there, your body craves. But it's a real craving. It's not. Summertime, you walk in the street here, you have urges. The body wants certain pleasures. But you're also equally aware that a really righteous person, a real moral person, wouldn't give in. You would say, I'm above that. Now, we're all above that. That doesn't take away from the fact that it's a test. And it's only a test because I have that pull in both directions. So we're tested, why? Now, we could say we're tested so God can see, well, is he going to pass or not? It's a problem with that. God knows whether he's going to pass or not. That, you can save that for Breitowitz. That's the old question. If he knows what we're going to do, how did he know what we're going to do and why necessary to give us the test to begin with? He knows the outcome anyway. Very good question. If he knows we're going to pass or not, so why bother with the test? So one answer given, and a very, very important answer. You know who doesn't know? Who doesn't know if you're going to pass the test or not before the test? We don't know. We have no idea. We know we want to do this. We know we're not supposed to do this. We have no idea whether we're going to pass the test or not. We don't even know if we're capable of passing the test. We might just say, it's no. Now, there are tests that we're not capable of passing, or there are things that we're going to encounter. It's a true story. I had this with a student quite a few years ago who was starting to keep Shabbos. And I had advised him, if you're going to keep, here in Ohr Somayach, wow. No one knew it was July 4th, I don't think. Friday was July 4th. I didn't hear anybody talking about July 4th. No one saying they're missing the fireworks. And I guarantee you that all of you, and myself to some degree as well, had you been in America, we'd be all, pun intended, fired up about July 4th. Wow, what are we doing, where we're going? It's like, why, it's the same July 4th. Is it a meaningful day or is it not a meaningful day? So why wasn't it taking up any space in our heads this past Friday? Because we know we were doing something that was a lot more absorbing, a lot more attractive, a lot more rewarding, a lot more meaningful, a lot more purposeful. And we recognize that. We do recognize that. So depending where you are, so by putting yourself here, oh wow, I can get a different perspective on things. So to get back to this fellow, he was keeping Shabbos, and I told him to prepare. Don't just, so to speak, fall into Shabbos. You don't stand a chance. It's going to be Shabbos, you got to prepare. You got to prepare, whatever, where are you? Do you have a family to go to? If not, you can be by yourself. So get a bottle of wine, get some good Shabbos reading material, buy some good food. Anyway, in the middle of, he gets a knock on the door from his friends, come on, we're going out. Like they did every Friday night, his friends. And like he used to do as well. And they go, come on, you did enough for Friday night, come on. So they get him to go. And he hangs out with them, and he goes to a nightclub, and he meets people, and met some other kind of people, and they're leaving the bar, and they're all going, and he goes, I got to go back. I go, come on, no, I'm going back. And he goes back to his dorm, calls me next week, and he's beside himself. I thought I could do it, I see I can't. I went with them, and I went to this place, and came back really depressed. I said, seriously? When they left the bar and they went, you left them? Wow. How'd you do that? You think you failed the test? I say you got 100. I say you weren't ready yet to resist not going with them at all. That wasn't your test. Your test was, are you going to break away from them before they went to do the other activity? If we look at tests that way, if we look at tests that it's not an all or nothing, and it's not, well, I'd rather get a 20 than a 0, because it's marked on a curve. Well, it's really not a curve. It's marked for you. The whole test was designed for you specifically, and where the point of that test was also designed for you exclusively. So wherever at that point is, wherever that juncture is, when you can, okay, I can stop. I'm going to pause. I'm going to process. What am I doing? Where am I headed? That's passing the test. And now that you see, now that you can internalize that, I was able to say no to them. I was able to break away from them. So now you learn something very valuable about yourself. You've learned that you have it within you to be able to overcome a challenge that heretofore you would have thought you don't have the ability to do so. And that's what takes you to the next step. There was a speaker here many years ago, trying to remember the rabbi's name, but in his speech, I can't take credit for this line, said, do you want to live the life you lived, or do you want to live the life you chose? Most people live the life they lived. That was the theme of his speech. Do you want to live the life you lived, or do you want to live the life you chose? Most people live the life they lived. You'll ask people, how do you end up here? They'll have an answer how it happened. Is that what you're planning on? Not really. It just happened. And in that very same speech, he went to the end of that person's life. And you have someone on his deathbed, hopefully after a long life, says, you very rarely will never hear someone saying, you know, I should have spent that extra hour every day in the office. It's never his regret. It's perhaps, again, to get more topical, I should have had children. I was part of a movement like, no, I'm not going to bring more children into this world. No one that has children when they're 80s regrets having children. Your regrets are always, I could have put more value into my life. I could have given my life more meaning and more purpose. And if we jump forward, but then we roll it back again, I think it's a fair statement. And even in today's crazy world of whatever the values are today, and you guys are probably better at it than I am. I'm sure you are, because you're living in that environment. I can't connect. I thought, and I did. I stayed relevant for a very long time, considering my age. I really got the younger generation. I worked on it, and it really felt I did. Not anymore. Not. The segments of society that you guys are interacting and faced with, I don't even know how to advise you. It used to be you could talk. It used to be you could have a discourse. It used to be actually you can discuss ideas and philosophies in a civil way. You could be convinced you're right, they're convinced they're right, and you may be convinced that they're not right. But today I really don't think you can have, I don't think that dialogue is at all possible even. But you're there. But I think it's a fair statement to say, if you asked of someone, how important is it to live a meaningful and purposeful life? I think majority of people, I know all of you would say yes. I want to live a meaningful and purposeful life. Okay. So what gives life meaning and what gives it purpose? Is championing one of the causes that's being championed on college campuses, is that going to give you meaning and purpose in your life? You might try to convince yourself that it is. But when you get down to it, again, meaning and purpose, when you're doing something that you know is important, you know is meaningful, that creates in a person a sense of self-worth. You get satisfaction from doing things that help you in life. And if you sat down in a quiet moment, take a pen and a paper, I'll be glad to go over it with you. I'm here for another few days. Write down what are the things that you think. You can make a long list, and then we can start, defining it. What causes, what agendas, what is it that these are worthwhile pursuits? What is it that will give meaning and purpose in life? And then discuss it. Again, you're in an age when we need direction, and we want direction in our lives, and I think that's important. So to kind of, coming to the end of this lecture, is what you guys are doing is something, I might have had some accomplishments in life. From your perspective, you probably do think I have some accomplishments in my life. But what you guys have done, are doing, far exceeds anything I have done. To be able to take those first steps of ripping yourself away, of having the fortitude and the resolve and the conviction to, yes, I'm going to Israel, I'm going to yeshiva environment. Yeshiva, like, what's yeshiva? Yeah, I'm not going on a birthright. I'm not going on a co-ed trip. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to give myself the opportunity to have an exposure that's the real thing, that's genuine. And I don't think anyone here that's met any of the rabbis here, again, any of the mentors, that you're going to see that the genuineness. You come in contact with something that's real. Again, people, a life of meaning and purpose. And not only the meaning and purpose, but the real satisfaction, the real what's called happiness. Happiness and pleasure are two very different subjects. The world defines happiness much closer to what's called pleasure. Pleasure really is making me feel good. The more people I can get to make me feel good, the more pleasure I have. Happiness ultimately comes from the more people I impacted and helped them. Happiness comes from, generally speaking, again, we quoted Akiva Tatz in the beginning of the lecture, we'll quote him again. Generally speaking, happiness comes from doing what you're supposed to be doing. It takes work, it takes focus, it takes setting a goal. But when you see you're going to accomplish that goal, when you see you're making strides in accomplishing that goal, that gives you a sense of satisfaction. And as mentioned over Shabbos, you want to reach heights. So as you're climbing, don't look down, because then that will cause fear. If you only keep looking up, and you ignore, I say that all of you have climbed very far indeed. So my blessing to you is you just keep looking up and keep making strides, and hopefully together we will grow together. So thank you all very much for listening.